There are two Boruto in the story, and one of them is a certified time traveler. He could have been to the time when Kaguya was being sealed, just to rewrite the timeline for the better. And the recent twist of prescience, teasing a self-made version of Boruto being responsible for the broken powers of the present one, has backed this possibility. Kashin Koji looks forward in time to see what the time traveler Boruto has learned, and that's how he was able to instruct overpowered techniques to the Star of Hope. Well, the concept of future Boruto is something that I have already discussed in a previous video, but looking at how cool and plausible this plot twist might be, I decided to theorize a bit more on the life and narrative of future Boruto and how his actions could affect the story in the long run. There are many plot points that would get explained if the writers decide to bring up this counterpart of the main character who has been through tougher times, like the time when Boruto questions Kawaki if this was the only possible outcome, as if he had tried 1,000 times and still reached the same aftermath, or this entity from Kaguya dimension, and why future Boruto needed to visit that time period. But before we dive deep into these statements and how there is a chance of Boruto interacting with Kaguya, let's get straight to the series, whose influence on Two Blue Vortex is totally visible, the one which also has the time travel element, and I'm talking about Dragon Ball. So for those of you who haven't watched this video of mine, maybe because you forgot to click on that subscribe button, that you will do right now to never miss another banger like this one. There's a lot of Dragon Ball symbolism hidden within the time skip of Boruto. First we have the plots of the cyborgs and the gods. Both the elements have been used in Dragon Ball's Android Saga and God of Destruction arc respectively. The androids from Dragon Ball were a sibling duo, and the main artificial siblings from Boruto are 2 in number as well. 17 and 18 were too broken for the Dragon Ball verse, especially in the future, where they wreaked havoc and killed most of the Z fighters. Well, even though our cyborgs from Boruto are not evil yet, they definitely have omnipotent powers which make them really broken. The third artificial being from Dragon Ball Z, which was Cell, also seems to have a Boruto counterpart. I'm talking about Code and how good of an analogy he shares with the forms of Cell. Well, this analogy also teases a future form of Code, and it may actually be possible based on how many L's he has taken since the beginning of the story, and looking at how he's a loser only in this dimension. This plot element of things taking place differently in different timelines teases a new transformation of Code, and that's actually possible, so give me 15 seconds to explain that. Basically, the Code who won in the other timeline must have acquired some form that the current counterpart hasn't attained, but the mere fact that he does have a superior form in another timeline makes it possible for the writers to bring up that transformation since it's already written. Maybe not in this timeline, unless the plot dramatically twists to have Code take the massive W in the end. So let's jump from timelines to another universe, as the Uzuhiko of Boruto in action appears very similar to the time-stopping ability of Hit from Universe 6 of Dragon Ball Super. Not only that, the way Boruto absorbs the planet's energy in this technique, Goku's spirit bomb works in a similar way, by absorbing spirit energy from all the people around Earth. Well, that's not the end of the Easter eggs. This scene where Boruto takes a laser hit from Jura is very similar to the time when Goku gets shot from Frieza in Dragon Ball Super. I hope you have already subscribed after knowing how many analogies you missed by not getting notified about one of my older videos. And the similarities from this point only get more and more insane, as you must be knowing Dragon Ball extended the Godhood plot from Kami to gods of multiverse in Dragon Ball Super. Something similar was cooked for the Naruto franchise, as we went from the god of death Shinigami to supreme omnipotent entities like Shibai, known as the Osutsuki gods. The godly powers of Goku and Vegeta, like the Super Saiyan God form and Ultra Instinct, also got their counterparts as Shinjutsu abilities, and the mischievous Dojutsu, the Jogen, something that can be attained when someone is on the path of godhood or with the cells of an Osutsuki god. As I said earlier, Code might be inspired from Cell, and in order to defeat him, Piccolo and Kami had fused to become one. Similarly, Boruto and Momoshiki doing the same thing in pursuit of defeating Code could also be a Dragon Ball inspired element. We know Kami was the guardian of Earth in Dragon Ball, with the name literally translating to God, so Momoshiki being Kami would symbolize how humanity sees Osutsukis as godlike entities, bringing back the importance of one of Momoshiki's older statements, where he says that those who defeat gods cannot remain ordinary individuals. Now that we have counted so many similarities, let's get to the most interesting part, the time traveling element that Boruto could derive from the Dragon Ball legacy, and it has already been teased with prescience. In the third chapter, the way Boruto fought the Grimes heavily resembled how future Trunks fights in Dragon Ball Z, which means the elements of this character were somewhat used while penning down the legacy of Naruto's son. However, the interesting interesting part of this analogy would be that Boruto won't go to the past to save the other timeline, just like future Trunks. Rather, it's the Boruto from the present who's getting some help by his future self without him coming back in time. The prescience of Kashin Koji tells us that he's obtaining the knowledge of Boruto's mastered powers from a future timeline. This means there's a variant of Boruto in the future who has mastered powers like the Uzuhiko and Flying Thunder God by himself, and now with the help of prescience, Kashin Koji is able to make things easy for Boruto by teaching him all the broken stuff in advance. But doesn't this mean that the Boruto from the future had his own story and he learned everything by himself the hard way? Like there wasn't someone like Kashin Koji who could have given him instructions. So looking at how hard it must have been for him to deal with everything without broken powers is really astonishing. This may be the reason Boruto got killed in one of the timelines by Jura, but the one whom we are talking about was able to learn two really strong techniques from somewhere. This must have given him a competitive advantage, but little did he know he would also land on the same outcome. Notice how Boruto says to Kawaki if this was the only possible outcome in the prologue sequence. We know prescience can tell him the possibilities of different futures and what he could do differently than his future counterparts to prevent something from happening. But this dialogue hints that no matter if he gets powerful in advance or stops the situation of the Shinjus, he will always end up against Kawaki by fate. The information of the future counterpart who acquired Uzuhiko and Flying Thunder God by himself won't help him to prevent the only possible outcome. But the topic that we are gonna discuss today is the Boruto from a different timeline who made everything easy for his present counterpart. Let's say there wasn't any future where Boruto had learned broken techniques like Uzuhiko. Then it wouldn't have been possible for Kashin Koji to teach any such technique to him, no matter how many times he looked into the future. This means there's actually a counterpart who could be following the story of Boruto the way it was planned by Kishimoto in the pilot. In a recent interview, he revealed that characters like Code and Amado were not supposed to get so much involved in the plot, so maybe his original plans for Boruto were different, and this can also be concluded by the Jogan, the plot device with the most hype in the story that only appears in the anime. An animator said that this eye is connected to the Otsutsuki clan's dimension and its role hasn't been finalized yet. Well, it has been almost a decade since this information came out, so maybe the writers have finally figured out the perfect blend of Shinjutsu, Otsutsuki, gods and Jogan plot to the story. There must be some elements that were not planned in the original draft, just like Amado and Code's involvement to the story, and looking at how everything lines up perfectly, what if Kishimoto used some vital ideas from Boruto's original draft into a separate timeline? The same timeline which is being used by Kashin Koji to obtain information. Its events must be similar to the ones when the story wasn't supposed to get plot devices like the Jogan and the Otsutsuki gods. Now base up to listen what the original plot of Boruto as planned by Kishimoto was supposed to be. Judging by the interview, it can be concluded that the story of Boruto was supposed to end at the Ishiki arc. So everything from Code's return, Aida and Daemon's debut, Amado's extended plans were not a part of the original draft. That's why it's after the death of Ishiki when Koji had a glimpse of the future. It was the plan of Ikimoto to extend the story just because they came up with a massive plot device, the Jogan. Now coming back to the timeline plot and why I think Kishimoto had planned some ideas for the story to reach the prologue sequence is simply because of the existence of this scene itself and the reason it looks different in the manga and the anime. The anime one has Boruto with the Jogan and the manga counterpart lacks it, which means whatever original story that Kishimoto had planned would have reached the Hokage mountain fight with Boruto using a Byakugan. So that must be a completely different story since characters like Amado, Code and Aida never existed in that draft. It wasn't until after coming up with the Shinjutsu when they extended the plot. This means the Blue Eyes prophecy, the most iconic scene of Momoshiki, was also a later addition since it happened through omnipotence, and without Aida, there wouldn't have been any divine spell either. Now even though we would never be able to fully know what the original Shinjutsu-less vision of Kishimoto for Boruto was, but we can certainly theorize the life of the Boruto who didn't take help from Kashin Koji's Shinjutsu of prescience. So whether this future Boruto is from the original drafts of Kishimoto or not is not a concerning thing anymore, especially when we know that his existence is real and he can appear like future Trunks to give us a brand new angle at enjoying the story. The first hint which makes me believe that future Boruto is a time traveler directly comes from future Trunks, who used to walk through timelines as well. While the approach of Trunks was to inform the people from a separate timeline about the takeover of androids, Boruto's approach can widely differ based on the hint given to us from a Naruto chapter in which there is a caved entity in the background. You must be knowing from my time travel Shinjutsu video that I believe this person to be Boruto Boruto. But to be more precise with what I mean, I'm talking about the future Boruto and not the present one. Mainly because he could have a stronger purpose to be in the dimension of Kaguya. He could have found a way to handle the only possible outcome, which is the same in every timeline. It's the dark character development of Kawaki which turns him into the destroyer of shinobis. He's able to do something that no one in history could have accomplished, and looking at how much the shinobi regime means to Boruto, he must have went to the past to figure out a way to handle the Kawaki situation without getting him killed. The reason I think he would still be hesitant to kill him involves a number of factors. Firstly, the story of Boruto is not some rip-off of Hashirama's tale, who decided to kill Madara at the end for the betterment of the shinobi world. Boruto's approach to deal with Kawaki is naive, and he still believes something would make him have a change in heart. But with all the obvious hints in front of Kawaki that keeping a blind eye to what Boruto has inside him will come with consequences, I don't think there is any way for him to redeem, which is why he deserves to die. As all the other timelines where Kawaki was alive, the planet had to suffer after he was sacrificed. But Boruto's naivety still makes him see it as a small issue among brothers, which can be resolved. Even his counterpart from the future could have a similar outlook on this situation for some reasons, which may be why he traveled back to the time of Kaguya just to study how the sealing technique of planetary Chibaku Tensei works. His motive to do this must be to create his own version of a Fuinjutsu so powerful to get rid of Kawaki without killing him. We know Boruto can make his own variant of powers, with the vanishing Rasengan and Flying Thunder God being proofs of it. Moreover, Momoshiki was able to utilize his Otsutsuki experience in turning Rasengan into a bullet variant, and by these hints we can conclude that Boruto could be making his own version of Chibaku Tensei too, if he really wants to get rid of Kawaki the traditional way. It would be symbolic as both Kaguya and the one possessing her partner's powers would be sealed into moon-like structures. But the thing with Kawaki is that killing or sealing him is not an easy task, as he's behind the disappearance of one of the most important characters who could advocate the innocence of Boruto. For now, it's really hard to predict how Boruto will get his parents back, as killing or sealing Kawaki would only mean saying farewell to all the people trapped in his Daikokuten, unless Boruto transplants his left eye to become just like Shibai or Suzuki. But that's a theory for another video, so make sure to click on that sub button to not miss that. Some more hints for time travel to be a real thing in the story comes from the anime exclusive time travel arc. The anime is known to foreshadow a lot of manga stuff from the anime specials as well as the theme songs, so I won't be surprised if this whole dedicated arc was created to tease the biggest plot twist in Boruto. Moreover, remember Jashin, whom Hidan used to call God. Well, the introduction of the two missing Otsuzukis could now make Jashin a real Otsutsuki god who could have been a pair of Shibai. So how interesting would it be for Boruto to fight this character who was being teased from the original series as the final villain of the story? We know the focus of the story will soon shift to Otsuzukis, so Jashin being the next big thing is a really huge possibility. Now the final theory before I conclude this video is about the second time traveler before Boruto, whom we all missed. Take a look at the summoning toads of Jiraiya and the original Ten Tails. There is no way someone could create their clones without looking at them, right? Assuming the Ten Tails is not a clone, it's still impossible for someone to be able to clone these summoning creatures of a dead man. Well, Amado was able to do it, which is how he gave these toads to Kashin Koji, which are just scientific ninja tools. And as it's obvious that he needed to look at what Jiraiya summons, which is technically impossible, so the only way for him to grab this intel could have been time travel. And who knows, he may have obtained the remains of Shibai the same way too. Well, let me know in the comments if I should bring a full video on this topic. Also check out these videos on Boruto's time travel Shinjutsu as well as the Star of Change. I will see you next time.